Leafs talk. JD Bunkis, Justin Bourne. Oh boy.
What just happened?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Boston, baby.
That's the way to start. Yeah. So it is the Boston Bruins. This feels like what an outcome for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like you end up drawing the Boston Bruins, your big brother, your big bad brother, and Austin Matthews still sits on 69 goals. Okay, I'll get into the game, but Borny, the story is the same. Like, are you playing Matthews tomorrow night or not?
Man, it's not an easy one for me because
I don't think so either.
My logical brain knows that the right answer is no. I'm trying to beat the Boston Bruins. I don't want to risk him getting hurt in a game that means nothing. I'd like him to be rested up. He's the most important player on my team. No, but I am aware of the history here, and this is a really cool thing, and it's a big number, and people are excited. And how do you tell him he can't go for it? I don't know.
I don't think you can tell him that he can't go for it. That part of it is definitive. Like Sheldon Keefe, no offense, brother, but you ain't got the juice to be telling Austin Matthews he's not going for 70 goals. Like that's like you know, when you would try to trick a parent, you'd like ask the one for something and then you'd skirt around the other parent and be like, hey, I really want this tasty cereal. Like Sheldon Keefe going to Austin Matthews, like you don't have permission to be saying that. He's going to go to the other parent and he's going to be playing the game. I also don't think that you could ever mess with the locker room to that degree and just make a unilateral decision of that magnitude. I think that there are only two scenarios here. One is that Austin Matthews says, I understand what we're playing for. I had a great season and I need the team to know that I appreciate everybody pulling for me, pushing for me, force feeding me pucks. I love you guys. I'm ready to go to war with you guys, but 70 ain't a thing unless we get the ring. Or he says, guys, I might only do this once in my career.
Yeah.
I'm Austin Matthews. If I score 70 goals, no one's done that since the 90s. And yes, there are plenty of numbers that point to me being having one of the greatest goal scoring seasons of all time. But everybody knows sitting on that 69 all of a sudden makes it feel a little bit like a failure. Like it does. Like it just feels like mission not fully accomplished, despite being 69 goals, which I know is the craziest thing to say.
Yeah.
I know when it comes out of my mouth, it's the nutsoest, craziest, most asinine thing to say.
The jump from 69 to 70 is no different than the jump from 68 to 69. It's another goal, you know,
this
like
is the kind of analytics I can get behind,
you know, like, you know what it is? It's like,
it's
a round, just circle number. Like it's just, he has most of the team's goals this year. It's been an unbelievable season. Yeah. Like but I guess it's a thing.
But Borny, no, wait, don't say you guess it's a thing. You feel the same way. Like it matters. The difference is like, yes, the math of 68 and 69, no different.
Yeah.
But the feeling of 69 to 70 could not be, it's worlds apart.
And I will say that one thing that I get hung up on. So in this conversation, I would be 100% on team. I don't care. He's the best goal scorer in the world. Play in the playoffs. Otherwise, this is going to be the defining characteristic of this team, chasing individual stuff over team.
Agree.
You know, like I think it has a chance to be defining, but playing in this game and scoring does not necessarily mean he's going to be worse in the playoffs. It is not, you know, it's not as simple as we know it's going to take away from him in round one. It might not. He looks great right now. He's healthy. There's a few days off between this and game one. Maybe he plays and he gets it and he's fine. You know, maybe he only plays 15 minutes. So we're at black and white. Plays is going to be worse. I would be more definitive on this, but playing doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be worse.
I genuinely believe this. And like, I think this is different for everybody, but, and I've used this example before, but I really think that the Indianapolis Colts, when they could have gone for the perfect season and they played Curtis Painter, they sewered any chances that they had for a Super Bowl. They just killed all the momentum. They were playing for something else and they were rolling that momentum in the postseason. Then it killed them. It slashed their tires. I really think if the Leafs put pressure, and I mean this, like if Austin Matthews feels pressured to make that decision, like he's not a leader if he doesn't sit this one out, that he is just some stat chaser. And so he lives in some sort of fear of not doing it. I really actually feel as though there's more risk of screwing up the team mojo with Matthews hunting 70 than there is risk of him playing in this hockey game and actually getting hurt or wearing down in some material way going into the postseason. Like, some people don't believe momentum is game to game. I doubt it sometimes myself, but I think when you have moments like this that are very special, especially when there's a spotlight on a spotlight player and a spotlight team, that you want to try and capture that moment and roll it into the postseason. And so if I'm Sheldon, I want him to play. I want him to say, I'm the best goal scorer on the planet. I know that this is a special moment. I don't think that this is going to screw me up. And I'm willing. Hey, guess what? Everybody already thinks we're stat chasing losers anyways. So if we go into the playoffs and I lose because we're billed as stat chasing losers, then guess what? Nothing's changed. But if I go into this, I nail 70 goals and I go to the postseason, I change everybody's mind because I start potting them in the postseason as well. Mm-hmm. Well, I think the upside is tremendous. So I'm going for the high of the high rather than the low of the low.
You play to win the game, you know, correct. Like you might as well, you believe in yourself. You believe you can do it. You might as well go out and go after it. Yeah, you know, it's God, if he goes out there and he plays and he doesn't get it, it's like, God, it just, this is going to be the defining way that people will look at this era, the Matthews era, if they don't get it done in the postseason, whether he scores 70 or doesn't score 70, if he plays, it's going on the pile with guys holding out for contracts, every dollar they can, prioritizing themselves over the team. That's going on the pile.
Correct. I have no pushback for any of this.
Yeah.
All I would say is, do you want to live in fear? Like, do you want to, do you want to live in fear of what the bad thing could be? I reference this all the time, but you know, you plan for the worst or you start doom casting and then it happens. It's like all that ended up happening is the reality ended up happening twice because you reacted to it in the present and then it ends up happening in the future. If I'm Austin Matthews,
JD.
Well, I think if I'm him, I'm looking at it and saying, man, I'm the best goal scorer on the planet. This is my team. I know the pulse is going and living and breathing by what I do. And I actually think that it would be like, I know I'm kind of going a little out of hand with this or going a little far with this, but it's a little cowardly actually for him to be like, nah, I'm good. Like selling it as the leadership thing. I'm serious. Now that I think about it, I'm like, cowardly. Yeah, go for it.
He's like, I put the team ahead of myself to win a championship for the city. What a coward.
I just saying I'm not saying he's a coward. I just said that it was a little far fetched, but I'm just, you see what I'm driving at here is I want to have my goal scorer being the guy who shows up in the fancy outfits and has insane unbridled confidence that when he goes and steps out on an ice sheet that he's going to dominate and find his way to 70 goals and it's not going to negatively impact the team. I would actually be more worried if he had the mindset of, oh my God, I better not do this because what if things go wrong? Then I think you're already dead. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I do typically think too that playing is better than not playing. Like you look at the success Florida has last year. They grind it out to get into the final spot. You know, they play their way to the Stanley Cup final. You know, I think it's a fine thing to be playing your way in. It's not that big a deal. It's just, it's frustrating that we're here. Frustrating that this was so foreseeable. And it happened exactly as we feared.
Yeah. I was a little afraid when I saw Maurice's pregame. Yeah, and I didn't know Maurice is a lot of bluster, but it was pretty clear that the message from a Florida team that likes to compete was, we're not letting this guy get this in our barn.
Everyone, they were coming.
Yeah, like we're going to do this. And so I guess this is so where we've landed is that it's fine to play. We're obviously a little uncomfortable by it. There is obviously a rational case to be made for him sitting, but the decision is in his hands, and we both think that it's fine that he plays.
I think it's fine that he plays. Yeah. I will applaud him because of the logic if he doesn't play, but I'm fine. I don't put it in the pile, even if people do, of like selfish things. It's fine to play. I really like your point about you can't be afraid to play. You're a player. You're paid to play. You're trying to play. So play.
So tonight, though, that being said, I thought that the Leafs played like a team that were chasing a milestone and not a team that was willing to compete. 30 shots to 4 in the second period. I didn't think that I was going to react really in any which way when it came to these final couple of games because they were largely meaningless. And, you know, I did like it was so bad in the second period, though, Borny. I was wondering if the Leafs were tanking to face Boston. Like,
yeah,
that was dreadful. That was like a truly painful 20 minutes to watch.
It was weird too. Like, I have like a running text with Kipper and Sam during the game, and after the first, it was like Kipper's like really liked the way the Buds played that period. He never says that, like they came out and like it kind of had it together. Good road game, couple of goals, in there physically, and I just. That's the most they've ever folded up tent in a game and just absolutely got on their heels. I forget where I saw the tweet, but someone was like, one thing you do feel about this Florida team is like, I don't think Boston has that gear. Like, I'm not saying you feel good about Boston, but good Florida, like January, February Florida is as good as any team in the league. So, we haven't got to the idea that they have now drawn the Boston Bruins, but I'm not sure that's a bad thing.
I totally agree with that take. It's funny when the Leafs play Florida that Florida just top to bottom has that nastiness and the skill. And you just feel it like wave after wave after wave in a game like this, where they don't let up. They're hungry on pucks. They're physical in corners. They get to the front of the net. They get to the dangerous areas. And like, yeah, I do feel that way. Like they can put together a 20 minutes like that where Boston can't. There's let up in Boston's lineup. Yeah, in a way that there isn't let up in Florida's. And so I'm very much with you. But yeah, the first period was good. Toronto outshot him 14-6. They scored those couple of goals. I texted you, maybe I'm a jinx actually, now that in hindsight, because I texted you, man, it's going to be kind of funny that Matthews might get this on an empty net goal. Yeah. And despite him only having, that would be only his third all season out of this entire streak. But what a weird way to cap 70s. Like the visual of it is, he, flips one down the ice from, 40 feet out. Like it would have been odd to see, but
they'd have loved it.
Yeah. Of course they would have loved it.
What would have been sad had they scored an empty netter with him down 5-2, clearly chasing it. It'd have been,
I thought the same thing. I really did. I was like, if they pop one here, like in those final 40 seconds with the net, I was like,
that's the image all time they play. Matthew said 20 years from now, they're showing a 70-goal season. Him going,
this poor guy scores. He's sitting on 69 goals, and everybody's like nitpicking the way it has to be in overtime. Like we're spoiled by that Sundin goal, his 500th, where Sundin comes down. It's an overtime against Calgary, and he just pipes a clapper over one of the best goalies in the game at the time. There's a unbelievable call. It's like an all-time actual call. Great moment for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I feel like that's how we need these things to happen, when in actuality, it's like, no, it's going to happen in game 82 against a lifeless Tampa Bay team, potentially.
Yeah, playing half their starters, empty netter, banked off the boards.
But yeah, it's okay. Like the game was chippy. There were moments where I was like starting to tense up because guys were starting to throw the lumber around, especially the first penalty that happens. I think it was Bertuzzi that ate like a cross check in the back. And I went like, yeah, Florida's very unafraid to slash you, hit you, like get dirty, but nothing ends up happening. So I guess like that's the only real takeaway I have from this game ultimately is like, hey, good for the Leafs. They get out of here healthy. Was there anything else meaningful to you?
And largely hung in there, right? Like in a lot of the scrums and stuff showed that they were willing to push back and be involved in that side of it.
Yeah. I got to tell you though, and it's the same thing with Boston. I love the fact that the Leafs can engage in that. Like I like that they have characters who don't feel like they wilt under that pressure. It does feel different than even last season when, Marner's getting the face wash and he's trying to smile in a playoff game, right? Like there is more of an attitude to this team, but it's still, when it comes to Boston and Florida and the physical stuff and the nasty stuff, they're still outgunned. And I do think that the more they can try and not be afraid of engaging in it, but not try and make that their thing. Like, when they lost to Boston this year and they were kind of chasing Boston around and trying to make it all fights and scraps. And I went, they love this. They want you to be doing that. And so I feel way more comfortable with where the Leafs are at with it, but I still don't feel like it should be kind of their identity piece in playoff series where they try to say, we're going to outdo these teams at that, because I just, that's a way for them to have a downfall.
It's a golf comparison to this is when Tiger Woods was in his prime, they would try to Tiger proof courses by making them longer. Yeah. And all the short hitters were like, wait, we're screwed now. And Tiger was like, do it, make them longer. And that's exactly this. Like, if you go out and like try to be tough with Boston, they're like, oh no, like, don't play exactly into our hands. So you're right. They do have to prioritize their own game and not try to be Boston. Does it weigh on you at all that Boston won all 4 games this season? I think it was 14-7. Leafs power play was abysmal. Goaltending was abysmal. Like, are you worried about the results of the regular season games?
Yes.
What? Buddy, I am trying not to just be in a perpetual state of worry, but it's
you can't broadcast in fear. We talked about this. You can't go forward in fear.
It's the Boston Bruins. They're absolutely your big brother. It's this is how crazy it is. I think that unquestionably the Florida Panthers are the better hockey team.
Yeah.
Like, pound for pound, what is it that you feel like Boston has definitively better than Florida?
The jerseys, goaltending and jerseys.
Yeah, I was going to say depth of goaltender, but even that, it's like,
it's marginal.
Bobrovsky can get just as hot as anybody on Boston. Like, we saw it last year.
This year.
Yeah, so it's not like I'm like, ooh, whoa, night and day, the goaltending difference between these two teams. You're right. The sweaters are infinitely better, and like the aesthetic of this matchup could not be there a greater disparity between the Panthers and the Bruins in terms of what you actually get to see on the ice. But in terms of like everything, best players, depth of player, forward, blue line, everything, it's like, I like Florida.
Yeah.
And
we talked about on our show, the top 2 centers on Boston are Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha.
Yeah. And Pavel
Zacha, that over Barkov.
Nice player, 20 goals, 21 goals this year. Pavel Zacha. Like, cool.
Matthew,
good for you.
Backhand goals.
Yeah, like you're not as good. Toronto, on paper, has a better shot to win the matchup, but we know how much the psychology goes into this, and I really believe in those edges where Boston looks at this and they're saying, "Oh my God, yes." Like, I think Boston kind of tanked these last couple of games.
Sam, I don't know if you heard our show today, but Sam was adamant that they were throwing these last 2 games.
I didn't think that they threw yesterday, but I did think it was a scenario where they were like, we're not going to press for the 1 seed, which, by the way, like, on a quick side tangent on this, if you're the NHL, I think this year has been the nail in the coffin for the death of this playoff format. But to me, there's actually more so than the discrepancy in points in the Metro of the 2 and the 3 seeds and the unfairness that represents. The biggest issue to me is that on the final 2 days of the season, where there's a real points race at the very top of the standings in your division, you've got the Boston Bruins going, we don't care, and the Florida Panthers going, yeah, we don't care either. And like, that's an issue. You can't have your best teams not want to finish higher in the standings. Like, that's just.
But on the other hand,
embarrassing.
If I'm Gary Bettman listening to JD Bunkis right now, I'm like, yeah, you think we're upset? We got Florida, Tampa, Toronto, Boston.
Yeah, that's nice.
Like it did shake out in a pretty favorable way. Do you believe at all in the Capitals couldn't get past the Penguins? They finally beat the Penguins in the playoffs, slay the Dragon, and that's the hurdle they got to clear, and they sail to the Stanley Cup. Is Boston that for the Leafs?
Yeah, I do. I don't think that it guarantees you anything, but I certainly would feel more confident about the Leafs, like, not just this season, but moving forward, if they were able to do that. Like, I don't think that this team gets to use their young excuse anymore.
No.
But I do think that
in those series,
maturing is starting to see people who are older than you as just adults. Like, when you start to see your parents as just like human beings and not your parents.
Yeah.
And I'm probably this is probably getting too deep, but I think it's a little bit of that for the Leafs, where it's like, if you beat Boston and Tampa in back-to-back years, you kind of feel like, oh, you know what? This is really our time. And there is nobody that has that edge over us. And we should be moving forward and checking out on a lot of the ghosts. Like, you beat that team and you put away 3 consecutive playoff losses to them in recent vintage that most Leaf fans are aware of and now have something to point to. So I think it would have a massive, massive psychological benefit to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think it's like, oh, if they win, they're going to the Cup. I've never been like a believer of that stuff, but I really do think that if they were able to do that, you could believe in this core in a way that I don't think you could if they lose again. And it's like another season of a first round exit, and the third time that these guys have lost to the Boston Bruins. Like,
yeah.
You might as well.
And a Bruins team that, they're without Bergeron now.
Yeah.
They're without Krejci. Like, this is not those Bruins.
Yeah, it's not. So, go out and beat them. Like, again, I
need a save from a goalie. Several.
Can I? That's my other thing from this game, though. Where are you at with Wool?
He didn't play well enough for me tonight to feel any differently than I did prior to this game. I haven't felt like he's had a fair shake post-injury to get back to the guy he was before the injury.
I think that's fair. He did get the, like...
It
depends how you feel about the Boston games.
Yeah. I feel like you are... Have you given up on Wool?
No.
Okay.
I haven't given up on Wool, but I just think that, like, so I watched a little bit of the Blue Jays game tonight as the Leafs are on, right? Like, it's the meaningless third period. And I'm like, okay, prepping for the show. I've got the Jays on, and Jordan Romano comes back from an injury, and they put him in leverage against the New York Yankees. And he required two miraculous defensive plays in order for him to escape with the actual save. And it looked kind of asinine that the manager went to him in such a high leverage spot against a division rival when you're playing for a series win. And I do think that, with the benefit of hindsight, it was probably a mistake for them to throw him to the wolves of the Boston Bruins in that spot if they did feel as though he was the guy. I understand that you want to stress test players. It's the NHL, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure he was fully ready, and it never felt like he was the same guy from that point forward. So yeah.
Would you play him again tomorrow, knowing that you want your guys to play? He hasn't played a ton.
Do I play Wool tomorrow again?
Yeah.
I would play Martin Jones.
See, I don't, the more I've thought about this, Wool needs to play hockey games to find himself again, and he's not going to start game one, which means at soonest his next start is looking like Monday to Wednesday if Samsonov isn't good. I just think you play him as much as you can, knowing he's going to have plenty of time to rest.
I will say this, that like the 3 times that he faced the Bruins, like he's got an .865 save percentage now, Wool. I'd be terrified at the prospect of putting him in the net in that series. Like I think you're living and dying with Samsonov. Like, it's to the point, I haven't given up on him, but this is how crazy my brain went. I went like, okay, so like the cap's done and Matt Murray could. I'm like,
yeah. Played one game in the American League and gave up 4.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't mean it in a serious way. It's just more like my brain did go there. Like I looked at the stats at the Marlies to be like, is this an option if it does happen?
When you're backed into a corner, you'll look for any help, any way out.
I don't love that was a thought I had. Like I think that tells you a lot about where I'm at. Like here's what I would say too is I'm the only person I think in the entire Toronto media landscape that said Samsonov had a chance of still starting game 1 of the postseason, and that I thought it was going to be competitive down the stretch. And I'm really not taking a victory lap because I feel like he could get pumped for 5 goals in the first game. And it's just like, like, woohoo, you were right that he got game 1.
Yeah.
No, he let in all the goals.
I do feel like Samsonov and Wool have one thing in common, and that they're high ceiling, low floor goalies right now. I do think that they're able to play very well. They can hit high notes. And that's not the same for Martin Jones necessarily, or a lot of guys who can make the saves, give you 900. Both these guys can be really good or really bad. You just need to get hot at the right time. Everyone knows that. But it's nice that they have the high side. I'm not sure either of them look anywhere near that right now, but you never know.
Yeah, that's not fingers crossed. That was good. Subscribe to this podcast if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify. Subscribe also to our other shows, Real Kipper and Bourne and the JD Bunkis podcast. I've got Versteeg tomorrow to talk about this matchup. I know that both of our shows are going to be loaded throughout the entire postseason with a bunch of different guests. And if you're watching on YouTube right now, we'd appreciate if you hit the thumbs up and if you left a comment. So you're coming on with us for the entire playoff stretch. It's going to be you, me, and Sammy for all these playoff games. Yep. My favorite. I love getting to chop it up with, 2 of my best friends in all of media, and just like, it's my favorite time of year. High intensity games, tons of viewers. It's great. So I don't know if I'll have you on my show before things start, especially since we were going to talk about a lot of stuff today. So I did want to bring this up with you. Like, do you have anything else on this game?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Morgan Riley was not good.
Yeah.
Like noticeably really not good. Yeah, fair.
Yeah. Who did you think tonight? You were like, man, wow.
Excellent game by fill in the blank.
Really incredible stuff. I thought my only note of a guy was like Edmonton's turnover on the third goal. I was like, this is like that's as bad as it gets. That's a nightmare. So we haven't really seen a bad play from him yet, and that was the first time where I went like, oh boy, that's so that's what some of it was thought. That's why you're not higher on the depth.
Riley was -4 tonight.
Yeah, that's quite bad. That's really bad.
Yeah.
No, but here's the thing. Morgan Riley is like Nylander, where Nylander doesn't have his game right now, and he's been so stellar in the postseason. Riley benefits from the same thing, where you're like, hey, get to the postseason. We'll crush you if you suck, but as of now, you get a full pass. My only other thing before I get to this question for you was, again, classic Leafs. You get some young guys that are just excited about the first playoff win that they've seen in their lives. And they say, we want Florida in a moment of bliss. And it turns into this horrific thing that, Panthers fans who barely exist, who can barely sell out their building, who just went to the Stanley Cup Finals and it doesn't move a needle in their market by one iota. I had Stu Gotts on my podcast and he's like, yeah, nobody cares. He just sewers them right away. Yeah. And yet another franchise has another easy thing to chant. Like I heard it at the end of the game and I was like, God damn it.
Well done by Florida fans. I think it's worse that video was selectively edited. I think the same fans had chanted, we want Boston like a minute before that. So, that's just the way the cookie crumbles, man. You can't call out an opponent and lose.
Yeah. Could you imagine though, trying to get all triggered about that, like doing an expose, being like, oh, they edited the video. Like, shut up. Like, you just got to eat it. You got to eat your crow.
You got to eat that.
So you are a NHL awards voter.
Yeah.
Did you see the case I outlined today on my show?
I did not.
Okay. Ouch. No.
So busy, man.
I know, but you take this very seriously, and there's a lot of people that vote on these awards, and I genuinely think that this is a thing this year. Is that my position is this: is if you look at primary points percentage, Austin Matthews has better numbers than Nathan MacKinnon. If you look at team records, they're very similar. If you look at goals, he's got, I think, 18 more goals than Nathan MacKinnon last I checked. And so it remains that way tonight. 18 more goals. Even strength, much better, much better numbers. McKinnon's line has more expected goals for, but he also plays with Mikko Rantanen, has all year long. Clearly more consistent players on that line. Also, matchup data would indicate that Austin Matthews has played much tougher matchups. That's why he's in the conversation for Selke, despite only playing, 15% of the team's penalty kill minutes. Yeah. Which is not something that happens for Selke, guys. And he's now gained the reputation as one of the better defensive forwards in the NHL, or I should say better two-way guys, because I think people get their panties in a bunch when it comes to is he better defensively than Philip Deneau? It's I guess not. But, he scores 70 goals. So, I think I can excuse some of that. He takes more offensive zone draws because he scores 70 goals. He doesn't
optimizing, not hiding.
Correct. Exactly. He doesn't kill penalties because he's the best goal scorer 5-on-5, maybe in the history of the game. So you want to optimize the amount of time that he's on the ice 5-on-5. So if you just kind of look at it from matchup data, primary points, even strength scoring, goal scoring, which we value more, the fact that he's not just a power play merchant, Nikita Kucherov, who has over 50% of his points on the power play this year. Why do you think that the case hasn't been stronger for Austin Matthews? And secondarily, and I mean this, I think you can be kind of honest. Do you feel like there's some pressure as someone who lives in Toronto, covers the Leafs the way that you do, to not look like the quote unquote homer as a national writer putting in your ballot? Because I think that my theory is McKinnon hasn't won a Hart. And so it's easy. It's we want to give this guy one because he clearly deserves one in his career. Yep. But secondarily, that he is the safest vote when it comes to what is a very polarizing year with multiple strong candidates.
I think you have hit on two very accurate fringe factors, which I feel both of. One of them being as a Toronto voter, I'm cognizant I would be embarrassed if anyone thought I picked a guy because I'm a Toronto voter. Yeah. So it's almost like I coach my son's hockey team. So when all the kids are going, who's going to start? It's never my son, because I would be petrified of someone thinking I'm giving my son more than, than the next kid. So sure, that's a fringe factor, but it's a very, it's the outside of the bubble of things I consider. The career Hart Trophy for Nathan MacKinnon, I might feel that stronger than some other voters. I had him first twice in years he didn't win, and I still to this day think he should have won. So
yeah,
I have a
Draisaitl year he should have definitely won.
Which one?
The Draisaitl year.
And Taylor Hall. Hall, like there was a couple of articles that came out on the day of the voting, and it was like, look what he's done, to his team. New Jersey sucked. It was a bad vote.
The Taylor Hall one is like really tough in hindsight. I feel like the Taylor Hall one was actually a lot of like, look how stupid Edmonton is.
Maybe, honestly, that could be part of it too. So there is again, fringe, kind of like an outside part of the vote there. I also think that, it oversimplifies things somewhat to be like primary points. He's here and he's here. And it's like, we've always counted assists, second assists. That's kind of been a part of the game. And if you are someone who creates plays and moves pucks there, he's 30 points behind MacKinnon, or maybe 40 by the time it's all said and done. So, that's not worth nothing to me when I do the consideration. But I will say, he's got a really strong case, and I think the strongest part of it is that he is so good defensively. He's the best defensive forward in the conversation. He's going to score 70 goals.
And again, we know that from matchup data that he plays the toughest minutes. Like strength of opponent, he ends up with the toughest out of everybody in the entire group. Yeah, like Keefe wants him out there playing against other teams' top lines in a way that it doesn't happen with the other groups of players. Yeah. So yeah, that's just it to me. And like I simplified it in the final part of my show for my, you got to get the social clip out. And so the social clip is just me saying that, where it's like, I understand how a guy who could score 70 goals, 18 or 15 more than the next closest guy, who also is inarguably the best of the four defensively as a 200-foot player.
Face-off guy, big centerman.
Doesn't end up getting this award. Like, it just feels a little. I agree. Like, and I said this too, is if I was picking a team to win a championship, I would pick MacKinnon ahead of Matthews. Like, and there are fringy, like there's something like,
but that's kind of part of it too, right? Is like this guy is like a winning obsessive.
Yeah, but that's like, to me, the difficulty with that is, like, that's where you start to feel like, the bias sets in, where you look at aesthetics and say, well, I like the way MacKinnon skates better and he looks like he cares more.
Yeah. And if you're like, he's a winning obsessive, but if he doesn't contribute more to the winning, it's not more valuable.
Yeah. Like, that's not what he did for the award. And so anyway, if I had a vote, I would give it to Matthews. And I fully acknowledge that I don't watch nearly as much of the other teams. I actually think that if a lot of the hockey writers were honest too, is like, they're not able to watch as much of all of the teams as, like, I watch all sports. Like, I do it like I do a one-man show where I have to like literally sit in front of the TV for probably about like 5 hours to 6 hours a night. Yeah. And I know what I can consume as a like hyper consumer. Yeah. So like, I don't like it when it's like gate kept of like, well, you don't know. It's like, yeah, I think I know pretty well. Like, I think I have a pretty good handle on this stuff. Yeah. And I think it's very, very marginal. I'm definitely not going to be upset if it goes to MacKinnon. I'm going to tip the cap. He's one of my favorite players in the NHL. Yeah. I'm not like upset about this, but yeah, I'm a little concerned that this one's a bit of voter fatigue and lifetime achievement award.
I think that if someone surprises to win, I think Kucherov has a lot of momentum based on the distance between him and Braden Point. And a lot of people do the to the team thing. Yeah. Like, which, I tweeted about that today. I don't know if you saw it, a long tweet on my theory on how to vote for the award. But I could see Kucherov sneaking in there.
That would upset me the most. I think he's fourth.
Yeah. His stats are the most, you could pick them apart and say, not a plus defensive for his team. He's actually a negative defensive guy, points on empty netters, points on the power play, secondary assists. You can pick his apart more, but I know people who are voting for him who just think that he's means more to that team than these other guys do to their teams.
Yeah, I think that that's crazy. It's like, sure, he's got way more points than Point, but like the team is good, and they did get Vasilevsky turning it up. Like, if over 50% of your points are on the power play, I think that like that should automatically disqualify. It's like first of all, the other three guys are centers, like their jobs are harder. It's very impressive that he's been able to do this as a winger, but like, Yeah, I actually think that to me, it's like if you really want to do it as the best player award, it's Connor McDavid. But I think what we're going to do with McDavid and voter fatigue is like any year there's like any holes in the resume, we're going to go, okay, it's somebody else, because otherwise you're going to win it every single year. Because
like LeBron winning 4 MVPs over 20 seasons. It's like, okay.
He is conclusively the best player in the sport. Like, I will not hear, like, sometimes Leaf fans are like, why the disrespect? I'm like, because he's way better than Matthews. I'm sorry. Like, he just is. Like, he's much better. I think
best kid alive.
Yeah, he's incredible. But I look at it and I really feel like if you're not doing that, then it to me would go Matthews 1, McKinnon 2, McDavid 3, Kucherov like fine 4, but like you could make the case for like the Pasternaks and the Panarins and the Crosbys, like as close as I like to him.
I think Quinn Hughes, Roman Yossi, Sidney Crosby, Connor Hellebuyck,
like that is all in the same bucket to me. Those the three guys that I mentioned at the top, like they're the 3 at the top of the ballot that matter the most to me. And whatever, like the Kucherov fans can get mad. Like I did a huge deep dive yesterday in preparing for my show, and I was like, I feel like if anybody spends more than 5 minutes on this, that they can't possibly vote for Kucherov. Like I'm sorry.
The only thing I'll say about my ballot is that definitively he is not at the top of it.
Yeah, nor should he be. But anyways, I'm hoping that I helped sway you just a touch towards Austin Matthews. Don't live in fear, Bourne.
It was a good conversation.
Don't live in fear. Anything else for you, sir? Sorry, I kept you so long.
No, it's all good, man. All good. I'm all good.
Yeah, thanks again to everybody who listens. Thanks to everybody who watches. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow night. Like, I wasn't sure if we were even going to do one, but yeah, now Matthews is hunting for 70. So yeah, we'll be there.
There you go.
We'll see you tomorrow night. Follow us on Twitter at JD Bunkis, at JT Bourne. Same with Instagram as well. Reach out anytime. Share the podcast. We will see you tomorrow.